Baby, you are gonna go broke showing turkeys like these.
Now we're talking turkey.
Gobble, gobble, motherfucker.
It's turkey time. Gobble, gobble.
Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Let's Talk Turkeys. I'm your host, Movie Miss, and Drive-In Dave, my co-host, is off this week. But I'm not going to go this trek alone. I did bring someone in to discuss, I'm going to say, a guilty pleasure movie. This is Hollow Man from the year 2000.
If we're going to move forward, this is the next logical step.
Ready for you. Here goes nothing.
Sebastian, are you in here? So, what's it like being a ghost?
Ghosts are dead. I'm very much alive.
The question is, what would you do if you knew you couldn't be seen?
You trust your eyes. You rely on your senses.
Sebastian, this is not funny.
You think you're alone.
Why did you have to go out in public?
You have no idea what it's like. The power of it, the freedom. It's amazing what you can do when you don't have to look at yourself in the mirror anymore. But after he's got you...
Tell us where you are.
Sorry, Linda. You'll never be sure again.
He could be here. He could be anywhere.
There's more to fear than you can see. You have no idea how much fun this is.
And I'm being joined by Nick of Bad Movies We Love. Hello, sir.
Hello.
Are you excited about our choice this evening?
I'm so excited about this movie. I love Hollow Man.
Oh, good. So it's not just me. Wonderful. So this is a long one. This is an hour 53. And I don't know what version you saw. Supposedly, there's a different version with extra footage.
I have seen this movie many times. I did not watch a special extended cut for this. I was actually watching the movie with commentary. So I watched the one with Jerry Goldsmith's commentary, which was just on like music choices. So the whole movie is no dialogue, no sound effects, just music and his commentary. And then I went back and I started watching the director's commentary, which was Verhoeven, Kevin Bacon, and the screenwriter, I think it was, maybe one of the producers. And I made it to like the final act. So like I watched it 1.6 times for the specific purposes of this.
Okay. So I have the DVD because I've had it forever. I've just loved this movie forever. Yeah. So I've watched it numerous times. This one is a turkey, which is why we're covering it. It has a 26% critic score and 28 audience on Rotten Tomato.
Shameful.
I was shocked that they were so close. Usually critics is really down for something like this, not high scores, and audience, kind of saves it. Not in this case. So directed by Paul Verhoeven, who we love on both of our shows.
Oh, yeah.
For people that don't know, RoboCop, Total Recall, Basic Instinct, and of course, Showgirls, right? Oh, and Starship Troopers as well, correct?
Indeed.
Yes. How many of his movies have you covered on your show, do you think?
I've only covered 2 because RoboCop's not a bad movie, so I can't like legitimately be like, let's just talk about RoboCop on this. So we did Starship Troopers. Hollow Man's kind of been floating around as one I've always wanted to do, so I'm really glad I get to do this. And we did Showgirls and Starship Troopers. Yeah, that's it.
Nice.
So he's only been a 2-time offender, but he was the first 2-time director to be featured on the show.
Okay. Well, we do have a little connection between the shows because I was on your show to do End of Days.
That's right.
For Schwartz-Tember, and I believe that's the same writer. Oh,
okay. That makes sense.
Andrew Marlowe.
Yeah.
He based it on the H.G. Wells story, The Invisible Man. And this film wasn't a total bust. It had a $95 million budget and it did 190, debuted at number one. So people
Mhm.
went out to see it.
Yeah, I remember it being a big deal when I saw it in theaters.
I was just going to ask you, did you go out and see it in theaters? Because 2000.
Indeed. And that year, when this movie did not win Best Special Effects, I was furious.
Do you know who it lost to?
No, I don't. All I remember is the heartbreak.
Yeah, 560 effects in this film, which half of them we'll get to do not look good. But it lost to Gladiator.
Yeah, I mean, I get it. The Coliseum and the crowds. I mean, yeah, but Gladiator just kind of swept that year. So throw Hollow Man a bone.
That's right, an invisible one. So Jerry Goldsmith scored, as you mentioned, and I think it does a lot of the lifting for this picture, a lot of the heavy lifting, because it really gets you emotionally invested in some of the scenes. Because this movie, the premise is cheesy, really. And I think it gets you emotionally invested with the score. I think they did a great job with that.
Listening to him talk about working with Verhoeven and coming up with the score for this movie was interesting because he had already worked with Verhoeven on Total Recall. He had worked with him on Basic Instinct at that point, and I think he maybe even did Starship Troopers or maybe one other one somewhere in the mix, but they were familiar with each other. They worked well together. And, you know, he talked about Paul listening to the score just outside of the editing portion of it. Mm-hmm. So he, like, Paul Verhoeven would just be driving around, like, listening to the music, regardless of whether or not it was connected to the film. So Jerry ended up sort of saying that, like, he's done much bigger pictures, more famous work, but this movie was maybe the most proud he was as a composer in terms of, like, what he was actually asked to do, because there's a lot of sort of cat and mouse stuff going on in this. So there needs to be a playful tone, but also a little bit sinister. Like, it turns into a slasher movie, essentially, at some point. So it has to have the horror vibes. Then there's also this, like, hopeful sort of tune that plays throughout it, which I think is, like, the main Hollow Man score. It plays over the opening credits, too. And so you get this sort of, like, I don't know, this hopeful vibe of, like, the science that they're doing actually is important and meaningful in a good way.
So I'm just double checking over my note here for the director's cut. There are 6 additional minutes, apparently. There's extended dog death and rape scenes, which I didn't need, so that's fine.
Yeah, they were just talking about that. So that's where I left off on the director's commentary version, was right after the sexual assault, the rape in the apartment building when he gets out. I guess there's another scene after that as well where she is, like, left alone in the apartment crying, like, realizing what happened. And so they talked about that being scrapped. And I think they had mentioned the dog thing too.
Mm-hmm. And Linda and Matt in bed, I guess, is the final bit. It's fine. Yeah. We didn't need any of that. Did you know that Jennifer Lopez turned down the role of Linda?
I'm very glad that she did. I didn't know that.
Cell. Yeah.
Well, The Cell's amazing, so I will say that I think she made the right choice, but also she made the right choice to benefit Hollow Man.
Agreed. Top billed cast for Hollow Man, Elisabeth Shue, and we have a Turkeyverse connection there because she is in Cocktail.
Oh, okay.
Kevin Bacon, Josh Brolin, Kim Dickens, and Greg Grunberg are the top billed cast, and we can get to everybody else as we go. So one little bit of trivia I found was something, and I don't know if you heard this in the commentary, Verhoeven regretting this movie years later in 2014, kind of bashing it, saying it was boring. He failed to transform it. He was bummed out that he made the choices he made and wasn't defending the film at all.
Interesting, because that's very different than the tone he's taking at the time of the DVD commentary, which is probably like 2001 or 2002. So not really, like, super surprising. I mean, he's not glowing in the way he talks about the film, but they're talking a lot about the technical presentation of the film and sort of the behind the scenes achievements that were going on. And he seems to be very proud of that kind of stuff. And there's a lot of really small details in there that I wouldn't have put together just watching the film. I don't know if I've seen the movie over a dozen times, but there's something he mentioned about the inclusion of a miniature shot where I'm like, oh, I never would have thought they used a miniature there. And then, they switched to a matte painting to get the illusion of depth, and just like very good technical filmmaking. And a lot of that stuff is going on in the background. So maybe not stuff that made its way all the way through to the final product. I'd be curious to hear him bash it, though.
Yeah, I was a little bummed to read that. I was like, oh, I mean, I know all directors don't stand by their work all the time, but I think this movie as well, even though the special effects don't hold up that well under scrutiny now, I think it was great for the time.
Oh, absolutely. Don't worry, Paul. I'm here to pick you up, man.
That's right. So another bit of trivia I wanted to ask you. I don't do a trivia portion on my show, so I'm just throwing these at you now.
Oh, fair enough.
Kevin Bacon originally accepted this role under the false assumption that he would not need to be on set for the majority of it because he would be invisible. So he wound up wearing a bunch of suits throughout the filming to hide him. Do you happen to know how many different color suits he had to wear?
I know there's at least 3. There's a green suit, a blue suit, and a black suit. I don't know if there was more, but I did see that there was also portions where he was like, he had artificial flesh on the outside of his suit. So maybe that was 4, but I'll say 3.
So it was 4.
Okay.
The 3 you mentioned plus a gray suit. Apparently the green, blue, gray, and black are achieved in different kinds of visual effect work, which I had no idea.
Me either until watching the featurette.
You're right. And I'll share some pictures on socials, listeners, in case you're unaware. It looks really cool to see him side by side in the shots where he's wearing something green and then he's not there. It's really neat. Okay, so the IMDb plot for anybody who is not aware what Hollow Man is about. A brilliant scientist's discovery renders him invisible, but transforms him into an omnipotent, dangerous megalomaniac. I'm in.
Who wrote that, though?
Yeah, unfortunately, anybody can write those now on IMDb. It's kind of like Wikipedia, so it's a Wild West over there, but that's okay. I think it's fun. It makes me want to watch it.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely comes across more sinister than I think it was originally billed as. Like, it seems like it's a science fiction thriller, which it is, but it's also a horror movie, or it starts to sort of become a horror movie the longer it goes on. And like, for me, what got me into the theater was the science fiction element of it. I mean, I think it's a fair enough assessment, but I would probably have written something different.
All right. So our movie begins with a pleasantly chill yet ominous score over a mostly green screen as credits interchange with science-y looking shit, atoms and molecules. I don't know what this is. I'm not a scientist, as Nix would say. So Jerry Goldsmith, I guess this was his last film at a studio before passing away in 2014. Yeah. So we fade now in on, it's just an ordinary, defenseless, sweet little rat. I'm sorry, I know it's a rat, but he's this cute little guy in what looks like a sterile atmosphere. And he's in a cage. He gets grabbed and eaten by something invisible and larger than him. How did you think the CGI bloody teeth held up here in this shot?
I mean, this is late 90s, so a lot of the CGI from that time stands out like a sore thumb now when you watch it. And I mean, there's stuff even later than this, like some of the original Transformers live action stuff from Michael Bay, where I watched on TNT like a couple years after, and that didn't look good either. But I think in small doses, it works there with just the teeth, with just the rat. They achieve that shot with like a green screen hand, and then they sort of amplify how much pressure is put on the rat. I guess my question was, are those the teeth of a gorilla?
I don't know if it's the gorilla or if it's supposed to be something else, but the dog wouldn't have a hand, so the gorilla makes sense.
Yeah, a monkey ate that rat is what I'm thinking.
Yeah. I don't think gorillas are monkeys, sir. Monkeys have tails.
Fair enough. There's monkeys in there somewhere, and invisible monkeys are frightening. Monkeys are frightening enough.
Yeah, I'll never hear the end of it because my husband will hear that and go, now wait a minute. He's a monkey scientist.
Oh.
No, he's not.
They're terrifying.
So we cut to a man at home working ever so diligently on science-y stuff on his 2001 A Space Odyssey looking computer setup. Very old looking. I love it so much. And I'm Gen X, and so I remember when all that stuff was new and it was super exciting. And now it just looks like it'd be a big paperweight.
Yeah.
So we get more molecules and atoms and looking things, and what we're looking at is basically what he's working on. He's trying to crack. I forget what they call it. Cohesion.
Yes, I think that is the term that they use.
Okay, I'm sure it pops up later in my notes, but I'm trying to remember. It's some word like that, and I was like, "What does that even mean?" I had to look it up.
Yeah, the molecules, they got to stick together.
Right, right. Well, he wants to figure it out, so he decides that maybe eating a Twinkie will help. So he does that, and same, bro. When I'm frustrated, a Twinkie helps. He's able to go. Oh, he goes to his window and he watches his female, like a creeper, his female neighbor across the street. Now, she's not asking for it, obviously. That's terrible. No. But why would you have your big giant windows open and just start undressing willy-nilly when you know people can see you?
Yeah, she opened the blinds in the morning to let the light in,
Yeah.
Because that's what you do when you have nice big windows. And she was conscious of the fact that she's undressing and goes to the window and closes the blinds eventually. But
True,
before we get too far away from Kevin Bacon eating Twinkies, he doesn't even like Twinkies. He said he had a bucket next to him on set for the Twinkie scene so he could immediately spit them out when he's done.
Okay. Two things. A, what is he, a communist? Who doesn't like Twinkies? And B, why wouldn't you just ask for something that you do like? Why
Verhoeven told him no.
What?
He's like, nah, you're going to eat that Twinkie.
Wow. So it was a choice, a director's choice.
It was.
Okay. I guess he's good enough for Ghostbusters. It's good enough for us.
Yeah. And listening to the director's commentary, they're talking about specifically sort of the voyeuristic aspect of him looking across into the other apartment. And Verhoeven was very specific in that they watched Rear Window, and the setup of that depth-wise was what they wanted. So that's all a big practical set that they built on a soundstage to achieve that shot. And he was very interested in the voyeuristic aspect of it, which obviously we see a lot of, and Sebastian himself is something of an exhibitionist. So, I mean, there's a lot of like sexual fetish stuff that's in here.
Which, when it's Verhoeven, doesn't surprise me at all.
Exactly.
So this man eventually gets bummed out because he's missing out on them titties. So he starts pacing around in frustration until the stroke of genius hits him. He runs to his computer and he gets everything figured out with these clusters of molecules and green bubbles and shit. And eureka, he's cracked the code. I can't be excited for him because at this point in the movie, we're 4 minutes in and I don't know what the hell's going on. So, yeah, why can we be excited for him? I guess good for him. So we cut to a couple in bed now, and we see it is 4 a.m. and the computer starts ringing. Very, very early Skype, I guess.
The computer starts ringing. I don't think that adds up in 2000.
And so many lights on for them to be in bed asleep at 4 a.m. in this apartment.
Post-coital bliss.
Yeah, I noticed weird shit like that. I'm like, who has that many lamps on? So the woman answers the computer call. It's Sebastian. And we learn immediately they used to be an item, and she has since moved on with Mystery Man behind her. Sebastian tells Linda he's cracked the reversion code. There we go. That's another word. I'm like, I don't know what that is. So he does this screen share, and she's so fucking shocked at this revelation. And I'm like, weren't you working on this with him? Why are you so surprised?
He's up doing science. She's sleeping. She's moved on with her life and has a normal life.
Right. So she remarks, it has been 11 months they've been working on this. We get no actual explanation as to what this magical stuff is that just happened. Somehow coffee and Twinkies were involved. So he asks her, find Matt. Spoiler alert, that's the guy in the bed behind her. He jokes about winning a Nobel Prize and he's out. Peace out. So this is Linda. She jumps on top of Matt, waking him up. So rude. They rush to get dressed and shower. No showers. I wrote in my notes very big because I was like, ew. Especially like you said, post-coital bliss, and they're just laying in bed. So they discussed keeping their relationship a secret from Sebastian for a little while longer. Matt's not hyped about that. Matt wants to come clean. So then I'm not mad about it, but I would have liked a little bit more for the ladies in this movie. Like we have a bed scene with Josh Brolin.
Yeah.
I mean, let's get a little bit of him getting out of bed, walking around, not a lot of clothes on.
He's shirtless a lot.
Yeah.
That's
Not
all you
enough
get.
Yeah, right. That's all we get. So we cut to Washington, D.C. It's a real shot of the real Pentagon. They were allowed to do that.
Indeed, they were one of very few movies that could actually do that.
That surprised me when I learned that, for real. Like,
They
wow.
were just like, oh, yeah, well, of course, we love Paul Verhoeven. We don't make the military look great in this. What? We couldn't hear you, man. We love RoboCop.
Right. So there's some obnoxious rock song blasting from Sebastian's car. I have no idea what it was, but I was like, ooh, I don't like that. And I'm a music fan, so I don't know who chose that song. But he's zipping down the highway, and it's like, I don't know, 5 a.m. or so. And
the sun's out, so yeah, early morning sometime.
yeah, sun's out. I was like, wow, okay. I don't live in DC, so I don't know how that works, but I thought nobody on the highway, sun's out. That's weird for a morning commute.
And that's really him driving that Porsche in the helicopter shot.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah.
Couldn't have been CG. It looked too good.
Right. They're like, no, we had to use our CGI budget elsewhere. All right. You can really drive the car.
Yeah,
Go
to
for
me,
it, Kev.
good for him though. To me, the most unbelievable part though in this entire Invisible Man movie was the fact that there was no traffic on that highway. So he heads to the facility that houses their underground laboratory. There's a lot of security at the front gate. They know him. Inside the security garage, the guard acknowledges that the team is already there. So everybody is known and accounted for. They kind of let you know that right off the bat. They keep close tabs on all these people. Sebastian uses thumbprint technology to access the elevator, goes down to the facility. He sees Matt in his scrubs checking on the animal cages, not cleaning them. And there's infrared cameras. This is a really cool setup where you can see the animals that are invisible because there's the infrared above them. He does have a pair of infrared goggles as well, which I thought was really cool utilization in this movie.
Mm-hmm. Very futuristic looking at the time.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And then we see Isabel, the very agitated 300 to 400 pound gorilla who's invisible, trapped in a cage that frankly just doesn't look too sturdy.
Nope, not going in there.
Mm-mm.
Matt, I don't care how much you get paid. You need to trank that gorilla before you step inside the cage.
Yes, I thought that too. Tells her to calm down. So apparently she knows English.
Right? She knows him, but she don't like him well enough.
Well, she sits for a moment like a lapdog's when he tells her to sit. So I thought that was pretty funny. No weapons, and it's going to give her a shot. So I wanted her to rip his head off because this is a horror movie, but it's Josh Brolin, so I'm glad she doesn't.
Yeah.
She just bites his hand before he can give her the shot, of course, busts out into the hallway and is gone. Pound sand. So he runs around the corner and runs right into Sebastian. They fall down. Isabel escapes. Sebastian says, we need to trank her and get her. He pops open this box on the wall that houses 2 tranquilizer guns and some more goggles. So they're good to go.
We've been here before.
Right? They're like, this is not our first rodeo with this. So Matt mentions that the gorilla's getting more aggressive the longer she's out, invisible, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
They decide instead of Matt getting his hand looked at, they should just bet $10 on who's going to trank the gorilla first.
Mm-hmm. Gorilla bites. Don't worry.
Say no offense, but total bro move, like a dude move, right? They're like, $10. Yeah, I'll get her first.
You drive like a $90,000 Porsche. You're betting $10 on this? Come on, Sebastian.
I know. So they smile and run off with as whimsical, upbeat music plays here, like this is a game. Not like
exactly.
So they corner the gorilla, pounding on a door, and Matt misses with his shot. Sebastian hits poor Isabel. She falls down, and the doors open. Sarah, at first I was like, is she a lab assistant? What is she? But I guess she's the vet. Did you recognize her at all, that actress?
I didn't.
So with longer hair, she's Madison from Fear the Walking Dead. I was like,
go back and check that out.
Yeah. So she looks totally different here. But her character, I want to say I love her because she's all for the animals, but no, she really frustrates me in this. The amount of bullshit that she allows to go on. I mean, I know it's a research facility, But Sebastian just gets, I don't know, like out of control sometimes with these animals, and I don't care for her letting it go on. I'm just gonna say it.
Yeah, I mean, even though she is kind of like the only one who has a spine throughout the movie in terms of like really standing up to him, I think ethically and morally, they have to go behind her back later in the film in order to actually like agree with Sebastian that we're going to do this. They lie to them and tell them that they were approved by the Pentagon to continue human testing. So they knew that they were going to run into resistance with her character, but they're talking about the introduction of her character at this point in the story. And so we've already seen Sebastian's kind of a little bit smug. He definitely full of himself. Matt is like a little shy. He's not as confident. So he's like the anti-Sebastian. You got Elisabeth Shue, who's clearly smart and attractive. And there's some history there. You introduce Sarah, and she's like the only one that pushes back against him. And so like in that small interaction, that there's going to be conflict there.
And so speaking of characters and stuff, the one thing I did notice in this film, I look at it as like a sci-fi horror movie so that I won't have a lofty expectation of the script, and character development and whatnot. But I feel like in an Invisible Man story, this movie reminds me of The Shining, to where Jack Nicholson doesn't descend into madness. He seems like he's crazy from Jump Street.
Yes,
That's how I felt about Sebastian.
I think that's fair. It's like what you see is Sebastian is power hungry. He's a voyeurist. Very early in the movie, he says, I'm God. So we kind of like know who he is, and him becoming invisible is just an excuse for him to really act on his worst impulses. Like all that stuff was there. It was just at bay because there was social norms that were keeping it in place.
Yeah, basically you could be identified.
Yes.
So don't do shitty stuff. Don't be a dick because they can identify who's doing it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, once you strip that away. But that's how I felt. That was my notes, was just he's a dick the whole time from the beginning. So Sebastian asks Linda here, because Linda shows up, and what is the guy that you're dating like? What's he like? And she's like, he's everything you're not.
Yeah.
Which is what you just said. Anti-Sebastian, exactly. Sebastian comments, oh, he must be dumb.
Mm.
You're a dick, Sebastian. I don't like
exactly.
I don't like you immediately.
He's a dick.
Cut to the lab where sciencey shit is still happening. Sebastian, Linda, Sarah, Matt, and an unnamed assistant at this point are inside. The gorilla is there. Sebastian speaks to a man upstairs named Frank, who is overlooking the lab. And this is one of those character actors. I pegged him from Twister. Joey Slatnick.
Yep.
He's like one of those, and like and every guy, like I know him from something.
Yeah, they're like, we kind of need like a nerdy guy.
Yeah, he's perfect for that. So Sebastian jokes with him about being God, like you said, and they're gonna work on the gorilla here, trying to bring her back. Sebastian and Matt exchange barbs about putting each other in each other's memoirs. And I thought, what a fun nod to Chevy Chase in Memoirs of an Invisible Man from 1992.
I didn't catch that.
Mm-hmm. Which is the John Carpenter movie I wrote in my notes, why do I not know that? I love horror. Interesting. So they inject Isabel the gorilla with the serum. It seems to be okay for a minute. It moves through her veins, the organs. The CGI looks janky, but I'm in. Let's go. It fills out a lot of the gorilla, and you see she looks like a gorilla. The upside is that when she has a heart attack, I don't feel like I'm watching a real gorilla suffer.
Yeah.
Because it looks so bad. So that's the upside, because I'm an animal lover. So they shock her not once with a defibrillator, but 4 times before she stabilizes.
Got a big gorilla heart.
Good Lord. Everyone watches as Isabel becomes fully visible again. They put her back in her cage, and Sebastian comments on dissecting her brain, which upsets Sarah.
As it should.
Cut to a fancy schmancy restaurant where the gang's all celebrating. After a while, Linda goes over to Sebastian outside on the terrace, and he's all mopey now that he's cracked reversion. It's all downhill from here. This is where at the point where I tried to Google what's reversion, because I don't know. It's a generic term for altering the reverse effects of a mutation.
Okay.
I was like, okay, so reverse.
Yeah.
Reversing the invisible. Got it. Verhoeven got it.
Gotta
So
keep it simple. Can't get too sciencey here.
right?
This is a thriller.
He mentions he's not good with details, so he'll leave all the data reporting and number crunching to Matt. And I thought to myself, how did you get your degree? How did you get your education, sir? If you're not good with the numbers.
He's just naturally brilliant, but he hates paperwork, and
I
that's why he hired Matt.
So he's clearly delusional about why Linda broke up with him in the first place.
Absolutely.
She refuses his advances to kiss her here. He leaves sad. And then we immediately cut to him wandering the animal corridor at the lab where he pets the invisible dog. I did enjoy the screens above, like with the heat vision or whatever, so that you can see the dog shape and he's pet. I was like, oh.
Yeah, and Verhoeven was so proud of like not actually using digital effects to do the heat signature cameras. He's like, no, we just use like real thermal cameras, which the technology had come a long way. So we shot it all on thermal and then matched it up. But they were going back to the first scene with the gorilla in the cage, invisible. They were using obviously an actor in a gorilla suit.
Mm-hmm.
And they were like the thermal cameras were having issues because it was a suit, so it wasn't picking up the body heat. So they were like using blow dryers to heat up the exterior of the suit and then would shoot it so that they could actually get some heat signature. But then Kevin Bacon was talking about like the actor who was just like miserable and had to stop because he was overheating. And the body language of the gorilla was played by the actor in the suit. But then they had like remote control facial expressions for the gorilla. And he said that the guy who was doing the facial expressions with the remote was also doing them with his own face as he was doing it. So it's just kind of cool that like Kevin was that aware of what's going on and still like remembered all of this stuff and like paid as much attention as he did.
Oh yeah. This movie is a completely different movie if it's not Kevin Bacon.
Yeah.
I mean, absolutely. I know he was irritated with how it turned out having to film it, but thank God it's him.
Yeah, absolutely. Him being there in all of those different suits, being on set to interact with people made a huge difference. And he's watching it back as they're doing the commentary, and him and Paul are both talking about like you can tell like by how he walks and like how he holds his body, and there's certain moments where it's like you can tell that it's his face under the mask. And so like they could have cheated all of this with digital effects, but him being there enriched everybody's performances. And Kevin Bacon's such a good actor, it's like you don't bring him into the movie to just not have him act for more than half of it.
Yeah, and there's a little thing that's going to come up at the end here where we're going to be able to delve into that just a hair more. But yes, so we cut to, one thing I thought about with the gorilla. I wanted the gorilla to be like, Amy doesn't like Sebastian. Amy. That's what I wanted from my gorilla.
Yeah, we needed talking gorillas in this movie. And maybe more laser guns, but we got dart guns and flamethrowers. So.
Oh, Lord, do we? So we cut to a committee meeting where we learn Sebastian's team was given funding 4 years ago to find a way to phase shift human beings out of quantum sync with the visible universe and return them safely with no after effects.
Look, at this point, we're being so science light. Just call it in. We're trying to turn people invisible.
Yeah, they do this whole big spiel, and I'm like, wow.
Phase shifting. Okay.
Right.
We get it.
So we see the video of the gorilla footage. Not sure what's quite happening in the video. But Sebastian says sending them off is easy. Getting them back is the hard part. He says he hasn't solved the problem yet, but they're close and they need more time. So the committee tells Sebastian, even though you're a genius, you better give us some results pretty quick. Outside, Linda and Matt are not happy about what Sebastian did. They're like, why the hell did you tell them we're not close? Like, what the hell, bro? He says, well, they're the Pentagon, so if they know we've succeeded, they'll take over. And I don't know, is it the God complex? He just doesn't want to give up his work at this point?
Yeah, I mean, it's all power to him. I mean, even in the smallest doses, the first thing he does when he's invisible is like power and manipulation stuff. So I think if you take that away from him, he sort of really knows that like he's empty without it. And then he really has nothing to try to even lure Linda back with. So he's got to have some form of control at all times. Like he's the one who injects the reverse serum into the gorilla. He's the one who's like, even when they're going to turn him invisible, he's like, nope, put it in my hand. I'm doing it myself. I'm God. Like he can't just like let go of any elements of control.
Very true. Okay. Okay. So Sebastian says, yeah, we'll do the human trials and we'll do it ourselves. And Linda's very upset at this news. But after he mentions a potential Nobel Prize, Linda is suddenly on board.
Is it a team award?
And then Matt's on board because Linda's on board and he's fucking her.
Right.
So it's like, oh,
Yeah.
really? Really, you guys? Somebody stop him. So they gather the team. They lie to them by saying they have clearance. Sebastian says, I'm going to go invisible for 3 days so you guys can do some testing on me. And then we'll do the quantum reversion. Everyone's reluctant. They agree. Then we cut to Linda and Matt in bed, and she is trying to play hide the sausage, but he is very distressed about what has gone down. And this is such a bad idea, he's telling her. He asks Linda if she misses being with Sebastian. She replies, I love this so much that I wrote it word for word. The concept of Sebastian is much more appealing than Sebastian himself.
I mean, she's not wrong. And funny, like Verhoeven sort of joking about this in the commentary in this scene in particular. He's like, this is probably like the least sexual sex scene I've ever filmed. And they had tried a couple different ways to do it. And the writer is there and he's like, these sort of conversations that break out during moments of like sexual intimacy between couples are real, but in the context of making a movie, like she's about to go down on him. And so it's like, they're like, yeah, the audience isn't going to be like focusing on the right thing. So we have to like tone everything down and just make it like more flirtatious and their clothes are off. So it's like the audience gets the idea, but can also focus on the conversation that's happening.
Yeah, because she does throw in a few compliments here to Matt. You're better than Sebastian and whatever else she says to him that he fits better. And then I'm assuming grabs his dick because it looks like she's doing it under the sheet, and that's distracting. That's distracting. So yeah, okay. So that's just a weird non-sex sex scene. And then we cut away. The next day, Matt and Linda tell Sebastian it's not too late to change your mind. On their stroll down to the lab, Sebastian proceeds to tell a joke that I have found hilarious for decades. Do you remember the joke?
I don't know if I have it verbatim, but it's
give it a whirl.
Wonder Woman is tanning on the roof of the Justice League building and Superman's flying over and she's naked and he sees her and he thinks I got super speed and I can get in and get out real quick. So he flies down, bones her, gets out of there. Wonder Woman pops up saying, oh my God, what was that? The Invisible Man pops up saying, I don't know, but my asshole sure hurts. Something like that. And it's That's funny, close. They all laughed during that scene during the commentary because Verhoeven was just like, it's still funny to me because of how Kevin Bacon delivers it. He's like, yeah, every time I watch it, I still laugh at that.
Agreed. To this day, it's hysterical to me. They all in the scene barely chuckle. And he's like, come on, you guys, it's funny.
Like, you are a pervert, sir.
But he's got good jokes.
Yeah.
So he hops on the table under a sheet and the protocols begin all around. The one guy's up on the computer throwing comments out, hoping they're not making a snuff film. So we're 30 minutes in and finally we're going to get an Invisible Man. I was like, yes, let's do it. So the serum is ready. And I do like that I assume it's because it's a movie and for theatrical purposes, every time they use a serum, it's a bright, different color.
Yep. They're like, it looks cool.
Yeah, it looks really cool.
That's what we did. Orange was reverse, blue is invisible.
I love it. So Sebastian decides to do the injection himself. So if something goes wrong, they won't get blamed. And I was like, it's so that you can take credit, first of all. But also, you're all getting blamed if something goes wrong because Sebastian's taking you all down with him. So it doesn't matter. Oh, but yeah,
you're all in the shitter.
Yeah. So Matt asks Sebastian for any last words. He says, if I die, just pretend I said something clever.
We'll remember that joke that you just told us.
Put that on the tombstone. So he injects himself and they immediately panic because nothing happens after like 10 seconds. But then Sebastian says he feels something happening. He begins to thrash around. The sheet falls off. And if you look closely at 33 minutes and 11 seconds to 13 seconds, you get a several second glimpse of bacon penis.
Yeah, it's not the only one in this movie, but it's the first one.
It's the first. It's a good long one. Yeah, just good for you, Kira. That's all I'm saying. Good for you, girl. So all of his vital signs spike. He's expressing it hurts. And that upset me as an animal lover. I'm like, you've tortured all these animals. It hurts now?
You bet it hurts. You
How
think the
dare
monkey
you?
was thrashing before because it felt so good?
How dare they? So we get treated to some CGI as he slowly becomes invisible bit by bit. I felt like because the CGI isn't that good anymore, it hasn't held up. I can't get involved with like feelings like tension and nervousness and things that I would feel normally, like, oh no, because I know I'm not looking at him going through this.
Yeah, how many times have you seen this movie?
Oh, 20 at least.
Okay, so my wife was like playing games on her phone. I think she was listening to a podcast or something on the couch as I was watching the movie. But then as those scenes were happening, she's looking up and she's like, "Oh, what is this?" I was like, "I know you. I don't think you've seen this before." So she's like all of a sudden captivated by those scenes. So I think you and I watching it when it happened, it was like this was revolutionary CGI at the time. The longer you watch it, CGI has gotten better. I think in a vacuum, it's still pretty good though. And in just like the amount of effort that went into that scene, you have Kevin Bacon who stays on the table and acts all of that out.
Yeah.
Then before they even, well, they may have done it after, but at some point they did like full body composite scans of him. And I think we're including full body composite scans because you do see more Kevin Bacon penis from a dissolving viewpoint.
It's crazy.
Yeah, so like they're watching it again and you can see that the digital composite of his face, like even when they take the skin off, like it still looks like him because it's still modeled after him. And it's really him on the table going through all of that. I feel like it still works pretty well, especially if you're just seeing it for the first time. I mean, like it is 25 years old, 24 years old now. So like things have come a long way since then. But at the time, yeah, it was still pretty damn revolutionary.
So we're going to come across one little issue I have in this movie. It's not a little issue, it's a big issue.
Okay.
So Matt, Linda, and Sebastian enter the lab. Sebastian turns the lights down. Linda feels the need to say out loud, for I don't know, our benefit, his eyelids are transparent.
Look, she's got to explain it to the audience.
Yeah, because she says it to a room full of mostly scientists. Like, really?
Yeah.
It's for us. But what I didn't understand was in this movie, if he can't close eyelids, why wouldn't you just put a sleep mask on or anything over your eyes to go to bed?
Yeah, it's like they didn't have foresight when beginning human trials, right? Because like even sunglasses would help, which he uses later because he needs them. And it also gives his face structure. They talk a lot about how every time he's invisible, they wanted to get away from the conventions of previous Invisible Man films and they wanted stuff shaping his head. So he's wearing a helmet, he's got the electrodes on, he's got the hood, the mask, the glasses. They're always trying to like make sure that like his head is present. But yeah, they didn't really think things through. It's unfortunate for Sebastian because it sucks to be him in that moment. It's easily rectified, just tie a bandana around his head. I'm sure you have cloth or gauze or something around if you really need to close his eyes so he can sleep.
That was my huge, thing was just put something over the eyes. Problem solved. Get him a cute fuzzy sleep mask that says leave me alone.
And in that scene where he walks into the big laboratory for the first time and they sort of like introduce him like, ta-da, Invisible Man. That scene is great because that set too is all practical. They just built one giant set on a soundstage of everything. And as he comes in, they had speakers placed all around the set so that the actors would hear like the voice coming from or whatever sound cue so that like they would look around not knowing where he is. And then as he's like playing hide and go seek from them and he's like hiding behind the table, they bust out the thermal goggles. And then we see full frontal thermal dong from Kevin Bacon.
Yes.
They joke about that decision because it's filmed obviously at a different segment than the rest of that scene. And Verhoeven says to Kevin, he's like, well, it was your idea. So Kevin Bacon's like, yeah, I'm happy to fly dong in this movie. Don't worry about it. It's not my first time.
And we appreciate you, Kevin.
Yeah.
Thank you. So as you mentioned, yeah, they put on the infrareds to find him because he's popping around and he's, oh, you guys are no fun. And he's fully naked, even though he's invisible, when he's grabbing the chicks and squeezing them, going, you guys are no fun.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. It's kind of creepy.
Right. Exactly. It's like, it's creepy when you stop and think about it, but like the way that it's shown to us is like his personality is fun and he's just playing around, but it's like, dude, you're
Right.
fucking naked and you're grabbing on your female coworkers. Like, that's not cool, Sebastian. That's super, super naughty behavior, my friend. And you're just, oh, it's no big deal.
If he was visible, that would not be okay.
Exactly.
HR would get a firmly worded email. So everyone leaves. Sarah takes the first shift of babysitting Sebastian in the lab here. She's clearly the worst choice for this shift because she sips her coffee and then immediately falls asleep. And not even in a comfortable position.
Nope. Been a long day.
Sebastian comes in, touches her hair, unbuttons half of her top that she's wearing, pulls one of her titties out, plays with it for a solid 8 seconds before
Oh, wow. You
she
busted
wakes
out
up.
the stopwatch on that one, huh?
I'm sorry. As a proud owner of titties, you wake up immediately. There is none of this laying there for a while. This
One
was
Mississippi, two Mississippi.
it was nuts.
What was in that coffee, Sarah?
So she realizes her shirt is unbuttoned when she wakes up and she asks if Sebastian is in there. She looks over at a monitor and sees him get back into his bed. Red flag. There you go. Clearly
Yeah,
it
it's
was,
like
right?
plausible deniability. She asked if he was in there. He clearly wasn't because he was back in his room, but we don't know how far away the room is. Like, was she groggy still from her sleep coffee? Regardless, like, we know that he did it. I mean, he's a pervert. We've established that he is a pervert before that scene even happens. And like I said, the first day he's invisible, he's like, I'm gonna sexually assault my coworker. This is the first thing I gotta do. So, like, yeah, he's a creep from the beginning.
And the worst part of it is that the next morning, Sarah's telling Matt and Linda what she thinks happened. Linda, who has dated Sebastian, responds with, she has a tough time believing Sebastian would be that crude.
Right?
What?
I mean, you stopped dating him for that reason.
Yeah, absolutely crazy. Oh, I guess I could have been dreaming.
Well, it's an interesting moment because this is, the late 90s and you have a female lead, right?
Mhm.
Elisabeth Shue is our final girl in this movie. So you have a female lead who essentially betrays another female who is the moral compass of the movie. Like, she's the one that's there looking out for the animals. She's the one saying, like, our ethical and moral concerns are not being taken into consideration. She's the person that they're afraid of telling that they went behind her back to approve this process that the Pentagon gave the green light on. So she gaslights her at that time as well, being like, oh no, you had too much booze in your coffee or something. Sebastian would never. It's like, are you
Never.
kidding me? Like, I was getting groped, my blouse was open. You think
Yeah.
my shirt undid itself while I was asleep? Just circumstantial evidence is in my favor at that point. And Linda, my boss, is gaslighting me.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Firmly worded email to HR. Totally.
Mm-hmm.
So later, Matt applies these stickum doohickeys all over Sebastian to read his vitals and whatnot, I suppose. I wasn't sure because before he's barely applying the last one, Sebastian already has a printout of all the data.
Yeah.
Okay. I do like that Matt beats around the bush about Sebastian being out of his room and we don't want any problems. And it's like, at least somebody's trying to say something.
I mean, but yeah, he's afraid of Sebastian too, because
He
like,
is.
I guess like Sebastian, like, I don't know if he's their employer, or if the Pentagon is, but it's like, I think they all look at him as the moneymaker. Like, he's the genius. So without him, like, none of them are working in this field kind of
Yeah.
thing. And you could tell that Matt, he's very jealous of Sebastian's mind as well. And there's like an analogy he gives where getting from A to D, he's like, I got to go through B and C to get to D. But Sebastian's got the genius factor that just gets him from A to D without having to do any of that middle ground work. So he's intimidated by him intellectually. So he doesn't want to say anything that he doesn't have like 100% evidence on, because he's like afraid of getting embarrassed, like he did with the gun. Like he did sort of peripherally when Sebastian tells Linda, oh, well, the guy you're dating must not be smart if he's the opposite of me.
It's okay. I'll take dumb Brolin over smart Sebastian any day.
Yeah.
But Matt's there. Sebastian, I don't know. His character doesn't have enough depth to him. He's very, not totally one-dimensional, but just very much a louse for the entire film. There's no arc for him.
He's vain and he's shallow. I mean, those are things that come along with being a megalomaniac, as the film description puts it. But I mean, for me, the MVP would definitely be Kevin Bacon, because I think without him in that role, you struggle to have all of the other things work. You could do this with another actor, but even when he's Sebastian, the facial expressions, the tone, like the line delivery, all of that stuff makes him kind of menacing and bad before we even get to the invisibility stuff. But when everything's good, it's like, oh, he's cool. He drives the Porsche. He likes Twinkies. He does science stuff. He's the cool scientist. He makes science accessible for the year 2000 movie-going audience.
Accessible, I suppose. Okay. I don't know if that's the word I would use, but okay.
Phase shifting.
Oh, at this point, by 2000, I'm still stuck on how the heck does Star Trek beam people from planet to ship. So I guess this was impressive.
Quantum molecular phase shifting.
So male and female tech geeks show up, and I had to look up her name. This is Janice, played by Mary Randall. She has to use the toilet, but she is spooked by noises in there in this big open toilet restroom, and she's got her goggles on just in case.
Yeah.
That would be so unnerving, I have to say.
And you can still see like the hot urine in the other urinal. So like clearly somebody has just been in there. The thing flushed. I don't know if it was like automatic flush. It seems like a little bit ahead of the sort of automatic flush curve of toilets.
I'm not familiar.
So yeah, urinals, they just like, as soon as you get up and walk away, it just like auto flushes. Or as soon as you walk away from the urinal, the little infrared sensor measures it and flushes. But that scene was added after the fact, after the following scene in the conference room, because she details like sort of her mentality at the time and explains like, I'm paranoid to like take a piss. And they were like, you know what, that's good. And they went back and shot the bathroom scene to like actually show why.
Yeah, which tracks.
Yeah.
He could be anywhere. And
he's a voyeuristic pervert.
Right.
She's right to suspect that he's in the bathroom, to be honest.
You're not wrong. So the supporting cast is in the lunchroom now, chatting about what it might like to be invisible. They mention the difference between what people are like and what Sebastian is like. And all the while, he's been sitting there listening to them.
An ass cheeks right on that chair.
Nobody noticed the ass cheek indentations in that chair.
He scooched in like all the way to make sure that he was as invisible as possible. It's like, don't move, don't breathe, don't say anything.
Oh, I feel like that'd be hard for him, knowing what he's like, to be quiet in a situation like that. So we cut to Linda in the lab alone, looking at red liquid under a microscope. I'm guessing blood or something.
Yeah.
And her product placement Coca-Cola can keeps moving around. She yells out to Sebastian, and he says, "You have no idea how fun this is."
Yeah.
I get that. I mean, it might be cool for a little while. He massages her shoulders, brushes her hair off her face, kisses her. She gets up, grabs her coat, and says, "Oh, this is all too familiar." Sebastian basically asks her for sex here.
Yep.
I found it odd throughout this whole movie. It's not just here. I was going to say it later, but I'll say it now. She doesn't immediately shut him down, ever. She lets things go on and then goes, "Oh, never mind. I don't want it." After she's been getting it for a minute.
Yeah, they talked about the kiss scene on the balcony and that they had shot several different versions of it. And they were worried that if she embraced the kiss, it would undermine the relationship that we've already seen. And knowing that this is a character we have to cheer for later, they didn't want that to be the case. So there was always this sort of attraction to Sebastian that she clearly has to like his work ethic, his mind, sort of his playfulness, and probably his sexuality. Sebastian, in Kevin Bacon's own words, is like he's a very sexual person. Like the way he interacts with the world and everything, it's all very sexual. So I'm sure she's drawn to that because Matt is kind of boring by comparison. But it is very strange that she sort of entertains the advances.
Mhm.
You know, like when he kisses her, like she's clearly bothered by it, but you know, she doesn't immediately just run out of the room. She like picks up her jacket, but then he like reaches up her skirt, you know, like there's a lot of stuff going on where she could shut things down faster. But I think in terms of just how the structure of the writing was, like at that point, we weren't 100% sure that like Sebastian's going to go full psycho. So
Mhm.
you're still sort of like dangling the bait of like, ooh, are they going to get back together? You know, is there some avenue for that to happen?
They turn the dial from half psycho to full psycho.
Right. But that's sexual assault number 2 for Sebastian.
Right?
Is
We need a
one
little
a day
ticker to
so far.
keep count. So the next day, it is all hands on deck as everyone's in the lab doing sciencey shit. Sebastian's all hooked up, lying on the table, and the geek above states that he's been in phase shift for 86 hours now. So, yikes! They grab some orange-colored serum. Sebastian says, "I'll do it." And we watch the CG of it all as the liquid goes in his veins and suddenly hits his organs. And he says he can't breathe. Now, they can see inside him, but Sarah looks up at the monitor and says his lungs have seized.
His lungs are right there. Open your
You can
eyes.
see them.
She's a veterinarian. She's not an invisible man scientist.
So he thrashes around and breaks his restraints. We get to see more penis. I didn't clock the seconds deposit, but it's there for the people that like that sort of thing.
Thrice penis at this point.
Yeah. So he punches Lab Geek, and we find out at this point this guy's name is Carter because I didn't know his name until now. He kicks Matt in the face. He falls on the floor. The geeks above yell that they've lost their signal to him. No shit, because he just came unplugged from all his stuff. So at this point, the CGI has Sebastian looking like Frank from Hellraiser mid transformation.
Yeah.
Like just muscles and blood and shit. It looks so neat. I loved it. They get him on the table and they get a tube down his throat. And I've got shots of this I'm going to share on social media because it's really cool how they did it behind the scenes. It's supposed to be dramatic, but again, for me, the CGI part kind of kills it. I'm not that invested. And Sebastian goes back invisible, and that's the end of that scene.
But they finally get like his breathing under control. Like his heart rate calms down and then he fades back to invisible.
Yes. And then we cut to Linda bedside with Sebastian at the lab. She tells him he almost died, and he tells her to keep everything a secret from the Pentagon for now. He's going to be stuck like this for a while, and they need to make some adjustments. So they proceed to make a latex mask. Is that latex?
Yeah, liquid latex, something like that.
And I love that we get a close-up for who knows why of Linda cutting the eye holes for him and the slit for his mouth.
They really did that, so might as well do the close-up.
But what cracked me up is the close-up of hers. It's all janky and jagged and crazy looking around the eyes. And then when we cut to him wearing it, they're perfect circles.
Take this back to makeup and get these circles taken care of. But they were joking. They're like, Verhoeven's watching it on the the director's commentary, and he's like, that's a really sharp knife she was using. And they put like metal on his face so that she could cut, and so like around the eye she's really cutting like around Kevin Bacon's face. But
creepy.
he has like metal sort of like eye patches and over his lips so that they could like achieve that scene.
Oh wow.
Yeah, it's very cool.
I didn't understand why they didn't give him nose holes because he's invisible. He still has to breathe out his nose.
They forgot. Like, we need to make sure the mouth is open and the eyes are open. We forgot about the nose holes, sir. Because I think they initially plugged them when they were doing the mask so
Yeah.
that the latex didn't go up his nose. And then, well, those are permanently sealed in there now. They're part of the mask.
So at home, Linda and Matt struggle to beat the polka dot video game that is Cohesion. And back at the lab, Sebastian is puking, complaining how hard it is. I have one word for Sebastian. Wah.
Wah.
You wanted to do this, sir.
He did. And like at that point in the movie, too, Kevin Bacon has been in suits, like green suits. He's getting painted. He's wearing that latex mask. He's hating the process of it. And he kind of laughed a little bit about that moment he yells at Josh Brolin. He's like, "You don't know what it's like." And he's like, "Yeah, that was like coming from a real place at that time." But they filmed, like he said, they filmed almost entirely in sequence, which is like super rare. He's
That's
like,
rare.
yeah, he's like, I don't think I've ever done that before, but everything was filmed almost entirely in sequence. So at that point in the movie, all those filming days are Kevin Bacon in makeup for like the last 2/3 of the movie.
That's
Right?
rough.
Exactly.
Especially when you thought you were signing up to just do some voiceover work.
Yeah, he's really losing his mind as the movie goes on. He said he felt isolated from the rest of the cast because they were interacting with him different because of the makeup. So it started to create like this actual division that we were seeing on screen between him and the rest of the cast. It was kind of like interesting how that parallel worked out.
No wonder it translates and works for me. That makes complete sense.
Verhoeven's a genius. He just like didn't want to let anybody else in on it.
He's a pervy genius, and I love him.
He is.
I'm glad that he exists in the world and we have
Me
some of the
too.
stuff he's made, right?
Me too.
All right, listeners, that is going to wrap up part 1 of my discussion with Nick from Bad Movies We Love on Hollow Man, the Kevin Bacon invisible penis vehicle. Be sure to come back next week as we not only wrap up season 4, but wrap up our discussion on Hollow Man. At the time of this recording, it is not available free anywhere that I can find in streaming. Where we watched it will be at the end of episode 2. However, right now, I just took a cursory glance at the interwebs, and it's basically pay streaming all over the place. So if you want to get a watch in before we wrap up our discussion, go ahead and Google where to watch Hollow Man. It's all over the place. So if you're interested in finding Nick and Bad Movies We Love, as well as his other projects, he will go into greater detail himself at the end of next week's episode, part 2 of Hollow Man. As for right now, I can tell you to just search in your podcatcher of choice for Bad Movies We Love and look in the show notes about where to find him on social media. So until next time, goodbye.
There was a lot of discussion about what had been done in Invisible Man movies before, and Paul was very concerned that we not repeat exactly what had been done. That what we wanted was a mask that did not look over-the-top evil from the beginning.
Yes, me, it's an improvement.
Hey, you'd almost pass for human.
I think our main drive was coming up with something that still looked like Kevin Bacon, but also looked like it was some crudely constructed mask.
But the funny thing was that we were using all of our skills to create something that looked sloppy and random. We had to sort of work with Paul to sort of figure out, what exactly would they use. We used a material that is used in dentistry for the scenes where they're actually pouring the goop on Kevin's face. Off-screen, we mixed bowls of alginate, which is a seaweed-based dental impression-making material, and that's what the actors poured on Kevin, and I believe that we had a mouthpiece for him to breathe in.
Every day they come up with some new technique to make me go insane. They haven't broken me yet.
Hey listeners, Movie Miss here, saying we know you have a lot of options when it comes to podcasts, so we want to thank you so much for listening to ours. Please make sure to find us on our socials and join us, be part of our bad movie conversations. We want to chat with you. We're on Facebook with an official page, as well as a Let's Talk Turkeys discussion group, where you can talk with other like-minded individuals who like bad movies. We're on Instagram at Let's Talk Turkeys. Our Twitter handle is at Gobble Podcast. That's GOBBLEPODCAST. And of course, you can always email us direct. We would love to get suggestions from you of movies you would like us to cover. If you want to be a guest on the show, we would love that. So directly, that's Let's Talk Turkeys, all one word, at yahoo.com.
You're still here? It's over. Go home. Go.